unfortunately you can't.
It's one and done. The whole thing or nothing.
Yeah, it's a sad thing to see. And here's the thing: the manuals are pretty robust compared to automatics, but when they start grinding you.
Hey Evan, under the 750, getting a look at the front suspension. So the idler arm in the steering here. Try to get a light on this guy. There's an awful lot of play in that idler arm. That's how much the wheel's allowed to move, just by moving the steering rack up and down like that. So we're gonna check the torque on this bolt, but I'm gonna go ahead and say you're gonna need an idler arm here. There's a bushing pressed in there, in that arm, that just looks really washed out. The curved front control arms here, it looks like they did press new bushings on the inside. That's the wrong nut. It's the wrong hardware in here. That's a 22 on the driver's side, or on the passenger side. We've got a 21 on the driver's side. And then we're able to see quite a bit of play in the ball joint here. So to me, that arm needed to be replaced yesterday. Another observation here, the front sway bar bracket was not at all tight on the subframe. That was, what, about 3 or 4 threads loose. So we're gonna check all of those. Obviously there is a leak down here. I'm gonna go ahead and say that's likely a power steering leak. Looking at the front straight control arms here, this ball joint comes down into the carrier and is torn open. That's all grease coming out. And this part is dated 2016. So if this was recently replaced, it looks like it went in damaged or was a defective part. And we put a wrench on this steering linkage here. So you can see if you can move that again. And it is all the way tight, and it's still moving around that much. So we are in desperate need of an idler arm there. And a quick note on the tie rods. We're not very far away here. We've got some gnarly cracks in the rubber. They're not all the way through yet, but you're not far from it. It's Thursday. It's been a long day on the road, long day in here. My left hip hurts for some reason, which is weird. So I did go up to Los Angeles, to Orange County. It's North Orange County, and picked up the transmission, and it is mostly here. My rental car was a Toyota RAV4, which is much better than the CRV, as it has an actual automatic and not the terrible CVT. Still has the same problem with the cruise control. You can't defeat the laser guide, whatever, adaptive cruise control feature. So whenever you get close to anybody, it jams the brakes on. Very, very annoying. So transmission's here. It's resealed at both interfaces here, at the bell housing and the rear case. So that should be nice and dry for a long time. He said the internals look really nice, really clean, no visible wear on the gear set, so that's a good sign. I put the rod joint on, the new dowel pin, the selector shaft seal in there, new flex disc, used bolts, and 3 new nuts. The problem lies in here. There are some parts missing in here that, it's my fault ultimately. I should have taken them out before the transmissions went up there. He has no need to have to fight with the clutch fork and the throwout bearing and then the little metal spring clip thing that goes on this nipple, which I replaced. I went with the plastic one. I've never seen one of those fail. I know there's aluminum ones, or brass ones rather, but I've heard of the brass ones actually breaking more than the plastic ones do. So new plastic one will be fine. But he had taken the parts out and put them on a workbench, and easy mistake. They didn't make it back here. So I'm not going to drive all the way up there. If I wait for him to ship them, it adds like 5 days. So thankfully they had all 3 parts in stock here in Southern California. The throwout bearing has to come from Orange County, so it'll probably come in early tomorrow afternoon. But the clip and the fork will be here in the morning. So once those go in, then this transmission is ready for installation into the car, which is pushed in here. I hate having to push cars around. It's very annoying and challenging. But by the end of the day tomorrow, if we don't have any more delays, this thing will have a nice gearbox in it and be drivable again. At least that is the goal. We put the 02 Le Mans Blue up today. Got to look at the rear main seal we did. It's bone dry, looks fantastic. Same with the diff. So diff input and output seals seem to be successful after some driving. We noted that the car was overheating, or getting close to overheating, sitting at like 90 degrees. So we get a look at the radiator, and it's just totally clogged up with debris and gunk, and I would need a light on in there, but it's full of shit. So Informed the customer, ordered a new one. New one came in. He's picking up Saturday, so this will be a priority tomorrow morning to replace the radiator. And then the fan clutch that we put in, I guess it had been stored wrong because it's sticking way too long. So we have a replacement under warranty that we'll be putting in too. So that should finish up the cooling system. We'll drain the block and the radiator and replace that tomorrow. And then this one's going to be on its way. The blue 540, not Toledo blue, Orient blue, whatever the hell the other 540 is with the beige interior, that's done. The alignment to go straight down the road was over here at about 11:30. It's like 90% of these alignments I sublet come back wrong. So we took it in first thing this morning. They fixed it on the spot. Customer picked it up. It's paid for and done. Timing chain guide car, radiators back in, valve covers are on. All the accessories, the hoses, the electrical wiring, the fan shroud, the expansion tank, the Vanos boards, all that crap that's got to go back on when you tear an engine down is back, with the exception of the plenum. We're going to run it without the plenum and without MAFs for a little bit. Make sure that those 3 coolant pipes from the thermostat housing are not leaking. Obviously make sure the engine runs well, doesn't have any timing, misfire, Vanos, any codes like that. So we would have gotten it started today if I actually had an S62/M62 oil filter, but we've been doing so many oil service jobs recently, I'm out of those. So I ordered them. We'll have more tomorrow. Struts came in for the 50,000 mile carbon black car. So new struts and all of the hardware, including factory springs. Those are on. Straight arms and curved front control arms are in and torqued at the ball joint ends, not there. That'll be done at right height tomorrow. Oil pan is resealed. Obviously the engine oil is drained. I think we still have to change the transmission fluid. We have to get the parking brake aligned right, but the brake lines are in and I think bled and hanging on bungee cords off the springs. So big push on this today. That's where Sergio spent most of his day. The other 50,000 mile carbon black, this is the 2000 with the hot rod interior, as I'm going to call it. This is the one where the leather's all too thick and it's not really leather, it's like vinyl. Sent the MPI results off to the customer. He requested estimates on the majority of the jobs. It took me a lot of time to write that up. Sent it off to him. He approved about 95% of it. So we're going to be doing a pretty full-scale restoration on this car, including getting estimates on rewrapping all the leather again and actually doing it right. And maybe redoing the seats, having the dash out, the door panels. It's going to be an expense, a lot of time, a lot of effort. But he seems committed to this car. Being a carbon black seems to be his favorite, and a low mileage example with otherwise a clean title and no significant body damage beyond just being really dirty right now. So that'll be exciting. Once we get a parts deposit from him, we've been playing phone tag for a few days. Once we get that deposit, I'll go ahead and order stuff, and this car is going to come a long way. It might be a prime candidate for a kind of a feature lengthy 39 source film about what we can do to one of these cars. If you're willing to invest some financial capital, we can really turn this thing around and breathe a lot of fresh life into this car. And lastly, today is the 750. So we put it up in the air trying to figure out what the loose front suspension components are. He had a shop that wasn't too good at working on BMWs, replaced the front control arms, all 4 of them, and then he did all the steering linkage himself. And we've got a couple issues. One, the sway bar brackets in the front were not bolted down barely at all. It looks like they threaded the nuts on there hand tight, so that's probably where some of the noise came from. That's an easy fix. That's done now. Then the front curved arms, they pressed new bushings into the big end, but ignored the failed ball joints, so there's tons of play in the ball joints out at the wheel carriers. That's a problem. And the hardware is wrong, and they initially put them on backwards, so we're gonna have to redo that. They sold him allegedly fresh straight arms, but they're dated 2016 and really dirty, and they're not installed right either, so we're going to have to do that. The most notable problem was with the idler arm, which he just replaced. It's an FCP Euro sourced genuine part, and the bolt and nut are tight going through the subframe, but you can grab the steering rack and it moves quite a bit. So that's going to be where the noise is coming from, and probably some steering slop that I just attributed to a heavy old V12 7 Series with a steering box, but certainly room for improvements. And it looks like we're going to be digging into the suspension. The rough 5.4 downshift gets worse as it gets hotter. If you immediately start the car and get it up into 5th and then squeeze the throttle until it downshifts to 4th, it isn't perfect, but it's definitely better. We've got about 90 miles on it with the additive. They want another 60. I'm not driving it right now due to the safety concerns with the loose front suspension and just the poor drivability with the worsening play and noise from the front. But once the suspension's taken care of, we'll put some more miles on it, see what happens. But my guess is we've got a bad solenoid in the transmission. It's going to have to be sent back under warranty. Back to my 540. I don't know if I touched on this before, but I did end up replacing the center exhaust mount bushing here just because it's off, and that's such a cheap part. Better to do it now than have it fail later and deal with the clunking. I'm also doing the oxygen sensors. They didn't look too bad once they came out, but I have no records of them being replaced. And again, that's one of those things when it's off the car, it's like 40 seconds. You can torque them down with the torque wrench, nice and easy. Post cats are here, obviously behind your secondary cats. The pre-cats on the 540 are actually on the intake or on the exhaust manifold. And if this were an M5 or if this were a 540, they would kind of be up here near the bell housing and block interface. So before the exhaust goes back on, I have those sensors as well with Bosch. What are they, 14375s or something like that, or 14377? I've got those here in the box, so those will be going on 13477. So we'll have new oxygen sensors. Of course, the exhaust hardware is in here, new exhaust gaskets, same as the M5. And then we've got our crank seal. I got a new Allen bolt for that because it was kind of chewed up from coming out in the past. Shifter joints here. Once we get cooking and have a transmission that can go on the car, it should go pretty quickly. The 540 exhaust is real simple to remove. The drive shaft is rebuilt and ready to go in, and then it's just a matter of clipping the shifter to the transmission and obviously installing the selector rod. So now that I've talked for 3 hours, I'm gonna get the hell out of here and go get some dinner. Home, fed, and showered. There's nothing like it. Wrapping up Thursday, I think, right? Is it Thursday already? I'm doing some laundry. I just ordered 51 jobs worth of parts for the 2000 M5 project. That's exactly halfway through, and after an hour of copy and pasting part numbers and updating prices and going through the order form and ordering stuff through BMW is beyond miserable because everything you add to the cart slows down the entire website. So as I add 20 of those little grommets for the valve cover gaskets, after that, like that I did last, because after that it's 10 seconds between clicks. It's very annoying. But we're halfway done with that. Tomorrow, with any luck, we will have a transmission in Project Sterling. And maybe that'll be in the garage tomorrow night. I don't know. Driving my car home tonight was an absolute blast after driving a RAV4 for 150 miles today. It's the best car ever made. This thing does absolutely everything. It's a rocket ship. It was a just ear-to-ear grin the whole way home. And I didn't exceed 65 miles an hour. Anyways, going to bed. I will talk to you guys on Friday. Good night.